When my son Ethan was born, I thought I had everything. His tiny fingers curled around mine like I was the center of his universe, and maybe, for a time, I was. He grew up in this very house, the one with the cracked porch and the blue curtains. I sewed myself. Every inch of it carries traces of him. The pencil marks on the kitchen wall measuring his height. The smudged fingerprints on the refrigerator door. But time has a cruel way of stealing things. It doesn't take them all at once. It takes them piece by piece. The laughter, the hugs, the calls that used to come every night. When Ethan left for college, I packed him a suitcase full of clothes and a heart full of hope. He hugged me tightly, kissed my forehead, and said, don't worry, Mom, I'll call you every day. He did, for the first few weeks. But slowly, the calls turned into texts. The texts turned into one-word replies, and eventually, silence. I tried to convince myself he was just busy. New friends, new life, new world. Still, I kept checking my phone every evening, staring at his contact photo, lighting up my screen, waiting for something that never came. Then, one evening, my neighbor Clara called. Did you see Ethan's post on Instagram? She asked. No, I said, heart skipping a beat. I opened the app, something I barely used, and there it was. A picture of Ethan standing beside a girl, both smiling like the world belonged to them. The caption said, meet the love of my life, Ava. I stared at that photo for what felt like hours, not because I was jealous, but because I realized I hadn't even known he was dating anyone. He hadn't told me, not once. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept scrolling through his photos, birthdays, trips, dinners, all with people I didn't recognize. Somehow, my son had built a whole new life, and I wasn't part of it. A few weeks later, Ethan called. For a second, my heart leaped, like an old record suddenly playing again. Hey Mom, he said casually, Ava and I are getting married. I smiled so wide that tears filled my eyes. Oh, Ethan, that's wonderful news. When's the wedding? I'll start looking for a dress. There was a pause, the kind that stretches like a chasm. It's gonna be small, just family. Ava sighed mostly. We don't really have the budget to invite many people. I froze. Family, was I. Not family, of course. Sweetheart, I whispered. I understand, but I didn't. Not really, for days. I tried to convince myself it was fine. Maybe there would be photos. Maybe he'd come by later. Maybe, but deep down, I knew. I knew I wouldn't be there when my only son said I do. The day of the wedding. I sat in my living room, the house unusually quiet. I had baked his favorite cake, chocolate fudge, just in case he came over later. He didn't. Instead, I saw the pictures on Facebook. Ethan, in a gray suit, Ava in a white gown, her parents standing proudly beside them, her family, not me. I remember staring at that photo until my vision blurred. The laughter on their faces echoed in my mind, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly invisible. The next week, Ava called me. Her voice was sugar sweet. Hi Mrs. Thompson. Sorry, it's been a busy week. Oh, by the way, Ethan said you might help with the rent this month. Things are tight after the honeymoon. Rent, of course. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. 3 years. 3 years of paying their bills, sending them groceries, buying furniture, making sure
After
they
I
never
hung up
lacked
that
a
day,
thing.
I sat in my
Asterisk,
kitchen
and
for a
still,
long time.
I wasn't
The
invited.
ticking of the clock was the only
Asterisk,
sound
I
in
took
the
a deep
room,
breath.
each
My
second
voice
heavier
came
than the
out
last.
calm.
I thought of
Calm.
every time I'd said
Asterisk,
yes to
Ava.
Ethan,
Didn't
every
Ethan
sacrifice,
tell you?
every
I've
night
started
I'd stayed
a
up
new
worrying,
rule.
every
Asterisk,
dream
a
I'd put
rule,
aside
she
just
said,
to make his
laughing
path
nervously.
smoother. And now,
Asterisk,
when I
yes,
finally said no,
I said,
it felt
I
both
only help
terrifying
special
and
people.
freeing.
There
For the
was
first time,
silence.
I didn't
For
rush
once,
to fix
I
things.
wasn't the
I
one
didn't call the
trembling.
landlord. I didn't send a check. I didn't apologize for existing. That night, I made myself a cup of tea and sat by the window. Outside, the streetlights flickered against the falling snow. I realized something. For years, I'd been living my life waiting for a phone call that might never come. The next morning, my phone buzzed again. It was Ethan Mom. Ava said you refused to help with the rent. Is everything okay? I almost laughed. Is everything okay? I'm fine, sweetheart, I said quietly. Just learning to live differently. What's that supposed to mean? He asked, his tone sharper now. I took a deep breath. It means that for years, I've been trying to buy love that should have been freely given. There was a long silence. Then he muttered, greater than you're overreacting. Mom, it was just a wedding. We didn't mean to hurt you. But you did, Ethan, you did. I didn't say it out loud, because I knew, at that moment, he wouldn't hear me. That weekend, I decided to visit my friend, Clara. She'd been my neighbor for 20 years, the kind of woman who could turn heartbreak into laughter with just one sentence. She poured me coffee and looked at me with those knowing eyes. Greater than you've given enough, Renee, she said softly. Now it's time to give to yourself. Give to myself. I repeated, as if it were a foreign phrase. Greater than yes. You forgot you exist outside of him, outside of being a mother. You used to paint, remember? You used to laugh. I smiled faintly. That was a long time ago. Then, make it now again, she said. You don't need permission to start over. That night, when I went home, her words echoed inside me like a whisper I hadn't heard in years. Start over, start over. So, I did. I dug out my old paintbrushes from the attic, dusty, stiff with age, and laid them on the table. For the first time in decades, I let colors flow again. The first painting was messy, full of tears, shaky strokes, emotions I didn't have words for, but it was mine. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, my house, which once echoed with silence, began to fill with something else. Me. Then, one afternoon, I heard a knock on the door. When I opened it, Ethan stood there. His eyes looked tired, older somehow. He wasn't holding flowers, he wasn't smiling, he was just there. Greater than hey Mom, he said softly. Can I come in? I nodded, stepping aside. He looked around at the paintings on the wall, the scent of fresh coffee in the air, the faint music playing in the background. Greater than you've been. Busy, he said. I've been living, I replied simply. He sat down, fidgeting with his hands. Ava and we've been arguing about money, about family, about. He stopped mid-sentence and sighed. Greater than I think I made a mistake. I looked at him, my heart tightening, not with anger, but with something gentler. We all make mistakes, Ethan. The important part is what we learn from them. I didn't realize how much I hurt you, he said, eyes glistening. Seeing you not pick up my calls this week, it scared me. You didn't pick up mine for 3 years, I whispered. The room fell silent. He nodded slowly, guilt washing over his face. You were always there for me. I just took it for granted. I know, I said, but you can't live your life waiting for someone to save you, not even your mother. Ethan leaned back, eyes fixed on the floor. Ava said you told her something about only helping special people. I smiled faintly. Greater than I did. And you know what, Ethan? I wasn't angry when I said it. I just realized I'd forgotten that I'm special too. He looked up, his expression softening. Greater than I miss you, Mom. I miss you too, I said, but I'm not the same person you left behind. I'm learning to stand on my own again. He nodded, and for the first time in years, he reached across the table and took my hand. No words, just warmth, quiet, fragile, real. That evening, after he left, I sat by the window again. The snow had melted. The world looked different, softer somehow. For the first time in a long time, I didn't check my phone. I didn't wait for a call. I just watched the sunset and thought about how far I'd come. Sometimes, love doesn't disappear, it just changes shape. Sometimes, the people you lose teach you how to find yourself again. And that night, I realized something I should have known all along. I wasn't just Ethan's mother. I was Renee Thompson, a woman who loved deeply, lost painfully, and learned beautifully to begin again. Weeks passed after that visit. Ethan began calling every Sunday, not for money, not for favors, just to talk. At first, it felt strange, like learning a language we'd both forgotten. He'd tell me about his work, the clients he lost, the ones he gained. He even told me that he and Ava had started counseling. Sometimes, I still caught myself hesitating, wondering if I should ask about their bills, about his car payments, about the little things I used to worry over. But I didn't. I'd learned that silence isn't always absence. Sometimes, it's space. Space for love to breathe again. One Sunday, he said something that stopped me cold. Greater than Mom, I've been listening to this podcast about forgiveness. They said, forgiveness isn't about saying what someone did was okay. It's about not carrying it anymore. I think I finally understand what you did. I smiled quietly. Greater than forgiveness isn't weakness, Ethan. It's what happens when pain gets tired of being in charge. There was a pause on the line. Then he whispered, greater than you sound happier. Mom, I am, I said, because I finally started living my life for me, not just through someone else's. That spring, I held my first art show in a local gallery. It wasn't fancy, just a handful of paintings, mostly nature scenes, painted in soft, quiet colors. But when people stopped to look, when they felt something in those brushstrokes, I realized that was what love was supposed to feel like. Not heavy, not desperate, just real. Ethan showed up halfway through the evening, holding a bouquet of wildflowers, messy, unwrapped, but perfect. He stood there, looking around at the paintings, then at me. You did all this? He asked, wonder in his voice. Greater than yes, I said. Every one of them is a story. Which one's about me? He teased, gently. I pointed to a small painting near the corner, a mother and son walking in opposite directions, their shadows touching even as they drift apart. Greater than that one, I said softly. He stared at it for a long time. Then he said, it's beautiful, Mom, like you. Later that night, after the crowd thinned and the lights dimmed, I stood alone in the gallery. For years, I'd measured my worth in the eyes of someone else, my husband, my son, the world that told me being a mother was the only thing that made me valuable. But standing there, surrounded by my own creations, I finally felt whole. I thought of all the nights I'd cried quietly into my pillow, all the times I'd wondered if I'd failed as a mother, as a woman, as a person. But pain, I realized, was never meant to be a permanent address. It's a bridge. You cross it, and on the other side, you find yourself again. A week later, Ethan came over with Ava. She looked different, softer, quieter. There was something humble in her eyes that hadn't been there before. She handed me a small envelope. Inside was a handwritten note. Greater than Renee, I owe you an apology. I let pride come between us. I see now how much you gave, not just money, but love. Thank you for not giving up on Ethan, and for teaching him what real love looks like. I hope you'll let us earn a place in your life again. I looked up, and she was crying. Real tears, not guilt, not manipulation, just humanity. I hugged her, and for the first time in years, my heart didn't ache, it healed. Months later, I found myself on a beach in Maine, watching the tide come in. The sky was painted in gold and lavender, and the sea breathed like it was alive. Ethan had bought me the ticket, no strings attached. As I watched the horizon, I whispered to the wind, greater than you were right, Clara. I just needed to start over. Somewhere behind me, a seagull cried. Somewhere ahead, a new wave rolled in. And I smiled, not because everything was perfect, but because I finally understood something. Love isn't a transaction, that it's a transformation. Sometimes it breaks you so you can see what was buried beneath the pieces, your strength, your worth, your voice. I once thought being a mother meant giving everything away. Now I know. It means loving enough to stop losing yourself. Owen Grace voiceover. Oh, true. If you're listening tonight and your heart feels like it's been taken for granted, remember this. Love freely, but never forget yourself in the process. People may walk away, but the story doesn't end there. It begins the moment you decide you deserve peace. 2. Soft piano fades out, wind, waves, and one quiet sigh.